This is a 10-year-old iPhone 5S from 2013. And this is a very recent flagship Samsung phone. You see any obvious differences here? I'm guessing yes, the size. While these two phones will be the main cast in this video, I have a couple of others who are going to play a cameo. So this is the iPhone 6S from 2015 and this is an Amazon Fire phone. This one failed miserably once upon a time. Unfortunately, this doesn't power on, but we are going to use this for comparison's sake. Smaller phones are comfortable to use, or should I say they can be operated easily with just one hand. But they don't sell. I must admit, my phone is actually too big for me. I just get tired of holding it. In fact, I've become very creative in finding ways to prop this phone up against something and sometimes against someone. And to prevent it from tipping over, I have actually mastered the claw position. Or I just hold it with both hands. This Samsung phone is 227 grams versus this iPhone is just 112 grams. 112 versus 227. So you can imagine the weight difference. This is half the weight of this Samsung phone or a recent phone. Definitely a nose breaker. But even with all these flaws and drawbacks, why do we still keep buying the bigger phones? Simply put, bigger screens just give us a more immersive viewing experience. This iPhone has a 4-inch display and the Samsung phone has 6.8 inches display. That is much bigger than you would think. That is almost 2.5 times bigger screen area. The Samsung S23 Ultra has a resolution of 3088 by 1440. And this 10-year-old iPhone was 1138 by 640. That is much lower resolution, but on a small screen it doesn't really matter. This resolution is similar to some high-end TVs, but too many pixels on this small screen. Where these bigger phones win though is much more viewing area. You can actually get a lot more website space on this bigger screen versus this little guy. And even when you watch videos, this has a much more immersive viewing experience, and this one rather just looks really tiny. This much better viewing experience means that people naturally gravitate towards bigger screens. These smaller phones also mean lesser space, and when manufacturers try to fit everything in this tiny space, that means there is less space for thermal heat dissipation. This can get really hot because the heat cannot go anywhere. And obviously this is an era of multitasking, and that needs bigger screen space and a bigger battery. The iPhone 5S had a battery capacity of merely 1570 mAh. These newer phones, 5000 mAh. So that's like 3 times higher battery capacity in the newer phones, which are obviously bigger and can house bigger batteries. And these larger phones, they can fit in way bigger cameras. This one has 108 megapixels versus the iPhone had 8. So that's 100 megapixels more on the newer, larger phones. So more space for the cameras also mean better zoom. This one, the zooming just stopped after a little bit, but these larger phones, they can fit in those bigger camera lenses, and when there is enough space for the lens to move back and forth, that means it can give us better optical zoom. This one can zoom quite a bit, as you can see the differences here. Ultimately, people just don't care about these smaller phones, although they are easy and comfortable to use. And these larger phones do not really fit in people's hands, but they live with it. Believe it or not, these older phones try to fit in a lot of things as much as possible. This home screen was a fingerprint identity scanner, for example, and they had the old headphone jack here at the bottom, and all these phones had 3.5mm headphone jack. And the screen area on these bigger phones are getting bigger every day, and the smaller phones have a lot of bezel area. So that is another difference that people look at. And the cameras have gone under the glass, the fingerprint sensors have gone under the glass, versus this one has the fingerprint scanner right here. And then they come up with foldable phones and all kinds of phones that can only get bigger. And above all, small phone or large phone, manufacturers probably spend a similar amount of money in making these phones, because larger phones have become the standard these days. And to cramp up all those components inside this tiny little space, manufacturers would probably have to spend more. And that is why, until a new trend comes up, these larger phones are gonna stay and these smaller phones are just gonna disappear.